answer your questions and you going in the right direction at least. And so we've been doing this for about 16 or 17 years, and hopefully it's been of use to you out there and to your communities, to your board members, and to your associations and property managers. I know as a property manager and as a CPA, this just sitting here once a week with Peter has been a tremendous learning experience for me. All of the things that come up and all of the information that I'm able to get from Peter has been tremendously worthwhile for my career. So I'm hoping that we hope that it's helped out some of your associations out there too. So please, make use of it if you've got some question. And the other thing, we always kind of say this at the end, but I'm going to say it at the beginning. We are on Mondays, 9 to 10. And if you've got something that's a problem, or you've got some board members that are, want to ask some questions, or, maybe you've got a specific issue that you want to talk about, and maybe you're just new to the show or you just found out about it, invite those people to listen next week, or and bring their questions, or you can let them know. And we also are streaming on the web, so you can pick it up if you're outside the area. If you've got somebody who's up north and you want them to join in, they can access the show at WSTU at www.wstu1450.com is the number or is the internet address for you to get to them and get some information. So we do also keep a recording of the show for some period of time on the website. So if you've heard something today and you want to go back and check it out, you can go on the website again, WSTU1450.com, and that will get the information for you, and you can take a look at that and replay the show if you want to. So hopefully that'll help you out, and you'll be able to get the information that you need. So that's kind of the base of the way we do things here. It's it's the format of the show. It's all about you. So that's the good thing about the show, is that we make it all about you so that you can get the information that you need. So again, if you want to call, 220-9788, 220-WSTU is the number in the studio, and we'll be happy to take your call. Okay, we have our first caller this morning. Barbara, go ahead.
Yes, hold on just a second.
Okay. All right. Good morning, Peter.
Okay.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Barbara.
All right. Good morning. I have a question.
Sure.
I moved into my condo association about a year ago, and then I saw the audit. And when I read the document, and I will quote you directly from our bylaw, the funds of the corporation shall be deposited in a bank located in St. Lucie County, Florida, and shall be withdrawn only upon the check or checks of such officers, employees, or agents as are designated by resolution of the board of directors from time to time. And when I went through the audit, then I found a whole section on all the investments that have been made. And I asked the secretary of our board about these investments, and I said, I don't understand how we're investing in all these investments, stock market, annuity, REIT, when Article 7 says the funds shall be held in a bank in St. Lucie County. And I got a very puzzled look and some concerned blah, blah, blah. And then I got the answer, well, the board voted on it. I have real concerns about this because I don't see a finance committee handling or doing any kind of advisory work. And I have a lot of questions about the nature of some of the investments being rather risky. In your opinion, without a change in the bylaws, was it appropriate to invest our funds?
Well, Peter, what's your thought on that?
If what she's reading is accurate, and I'll assume it is,
Yeah.
she says the funds are to deposited in a bank in St. Lucie County, or a bank that has whatever, that's authorized to do business in St. Lucie County. And I've seen provisions like that in the past. And quite frankly, I think the association should not be investing those funds in other things, even though they may think they're safe. See, in my view, I mean, if they want to do that, they should amend their bylaws to be less restrictive. I think that bylaw provision would be controlling. There's nothing in the statutes that address this. There's stuff in the statutes about commingling funds when they're invested, but nothing but the actual depository or type of investment. And I think what some board members lose sight of, and I'm not pointing fingers here, trying to cast any kind of blame or anything, but it's really not the role of the board to get the greatest return that they can on the association funds. It really is just to keep the money safe, and to be available for use when it's needed, whether it's operating or reserve funds. And we all know that interest rates are at historic low levels, and you put into an SNL, you get next to nothing. And I get it, and that's frustrating. But it doesn't mean that you're out, purchasing annuities or stock market things. In my view, if they want to do that, they have to amend those bylaws and give the board greater authority, power to do those types of investments. Now, is anyone going to go to jail over this? No, but I don't think what they're doing is in compliance with their own documents.
Yeah, let me add to that Barbara, that first of all, that an annuity, for you to purchase an annuity, it has to be based on an individual. It's an insurance policy. It has to be based on an individual's life. So therefore, that can't happen. That ends up being and that is prohibited by law, because you cannot have a member that receives a benefit, a personal benefit, out of, and it doesn't make any difference who they designate as a beneficiary. The basic thing is that that annuity is based on an individual's life. And so therefore they would have had to designate an individual who would have been the annuitant. And so that isn't allowed. I've seen associations do that in violation of the law. And that is, in my opinion, that's an absolute violation of state statute and of law. So I don't, and I think the annuity thing is an issue. Corporations can buy insurance policies on executives, but that doesn't, but not a nonprofit corporation, not a not-for-profit corporation, and not in this situation. You can't do that. So I think that's the first thing. The annuity is a definite issue. The second thing is, from a financial planning standpoint, the stock market is tremendously, for an association, is tremendously risky, because the association doesn't necessarily have the ability to hold that investment for 15, 20 years. Now, if it's for reserves and you're setting it aside, maybe, but probably not. The chance that the association is going to have to tap that. Well, if you have to tap that equity fund when the market's up 60%, yeah, you're fantastic, you're great. But if you have to tap it when it's down 30%, you're going to lose 30%. That's 30% real money that you don't get back. And the problem is, as Peter said, part of the task that the board is given is the management and the safeguarding of those funds. And the safeguarding of the funds is more important, in my opinion, than the return, because, like I said, it's not like the association can go back to the members and say, they can, but the members aren't going to do it, and go back to the members and say, hey, we lost 30% because we had to do the roof early, and so we had to cash this fund out and the market was down. Sorry, we lost 30%. We need a special assessment for you to put 30% in. If that happened to me and I was in an association, I would be suing someone.
Yeah.
And
People should not be investing their money in the stock market. I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. I don't care how smart you think you are, or how great the market's going to be doing. Like I said, the whole point of reserves, especially, or both, operating and reserve, is for the money to be there when it's needed. Okay? Again, I know people think, I've talked to board members, they claim that, they've been in finance for 1,000 years, and it's stupid to put the money into into some FNL or bank where it gets, 1% or whatever. But you know what? Again, it's not the role to get a great return. It's the role just to put it somewhere safe. I don't need stuff under a mattress, but put it somewhere safe, an insured, account, insured through FDIC and all that kind of stuff. So it's there, period.
Yeah.
And especially with these documents. And I'm going to go back to these documents again. I mean, these documents say what they say.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you get around that by plain meaning. They say it's in a bank in St. Lucie County. It's in a bank in St. Lucie County.
Well, and we've gotten into issues in the past, even with investing. From time to time, associations will take their idle cash and invest it in money market accounts at brokerage firms, the mutual fund money market accounts. But the problem with that is those aren't insured. If there are investments you can buy through brokers like insured CDs and things like that I've seen associations do, and I don't have as much problem with that. That's a certificate of deposit. Again, like Peter said, for your situation, Barbara, your documents are pretty clear. But even if they didn't say that, I've seen associations buy. There's a thing called CDARS, CDARS. It's a certificate of deposit account registry system, is what it stands for. And many banks offer that so that you can keep your investment under 250,000, or it used to be 100, and so you could be insured. So what you do is you purchase the CD through their system, through a local bank system, and then but you're actually buying a CD of a bank someplace else in the United States, but it's insured. So again, that gets you a higher return, but you've got the insurance. I've seen associations buy treasury bills, treasury notes. I've seen them buy those kind of things. Again, you're insured by the federal government. I mean, that's backed by the federal government, but you're not insured against loss of principal due to fluctuations in interest rates. So all of those things are a problem. Some of them may be allowed. Some of them, I don't see how some of that, like if you're purely investing in ETFs or something like that, exchange traded funds, all of those kind of things. I don't see how they can do that. I just don't see it. It's not going to have insurance with it. At that point, I think that I don't know specifically whether statutorily that it has to be insured, but I can tell you this: if I've got my board investing in speculating, and that's the term I would use, speculating in investments that aren't insured, what's to keep them from going out and buying? Well, I've seen them do this. They'll buy units in the association saying it's a good investment. I mean, come on.
Oh yeah, been there.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
How about a REIT?
yeah.
How about a REIT?
Right. Exactly.
A REIT was purchased.
Yeah. Those are the kind of things that I just don't. I think if you were challenged, if they were challenged, based on your documents, I think they got a problem. But even beyond that, I just think it's just that's just bad practice. Now, I will ask you this: on those financial statements, did they break out the from income, the fluctuation in the market value of those investments? Did they record the losses or the gains from just the market moving up and down?
Well, number one, in 2015, when I look back, 2015 and 2016, only compilations were done.
Yeah. Okay.
So the annuity was not even listed in that.
Yeah. Okay.
2017 and 2018 in the audit, at the investment section, they did level 1, level 2, level 3 analysis. And the annuity is not listed in 2017 or 2018. And it gets referred to by the person in charge as a CD on a continuous basis. It's got a 5-year maturation, and yes, you are correct. It is an individual named as the annuitant.
Yeah.
We've not been able to see anything. We've made 2 requests to see who the beneficiary is, and via certified letter, they have not been responded to.
Yeah.
well, what was responded to, I won't even waste your time with. But there are some issues and serious issues, and I have some other people listening in who are working with me on trying to resolve this, and we're very concerned. I have a big issue with an annuity. I have a big issue with a REIT.
Yeah.
A Phillips Edison shopping mall REIT. And these things have 5-year maturation date.
Yeah.
But we were assured we could collateralize these things if we needed money, and it is our reserves. However, the rate for collateralization was never mentioned.
Yeah.
And when I asked the question about the cost basis of all of this, I never got a direct answer.
Yeah. I mean, here again, I understand people are unhappy sometimes with the interest rates, but that's not the job of the board. The board is not, their job is not to parlay your reserves into into some huge fund, because the fact is, unless, let me put this way, I don't have a problem with the president or the treasurer doing this if they're going to personally put up their own assets as collateral, and if they lose money, they will give it to the association. They want to do that. Make sure it's good assets. I don't want the assets that they're invested in. I want cash. Give me a CD that's collateral. I'll take it. If they want to put that up, if they want to put their own money on the line, that's a whole different story. I'm being facetious because technically can't do that either.
That.
But I'm getting it. It's not their money. That's the point. It's not there. It's your money and your neighbor's money.
My money.
And it's the person down the street who's on Social Security who, lives in your association that can't afford to come up with more money because they've been putting it aside for the last 20 years. They can't afford the special assessment when it happens. That's the thing they're doing to those people in your community. They don't think they're going to do it, but if that happens, think what they've done to a number of people's lives within that community. That they would devastate some of those people. They would have to move.
Absolutely.
It's horrible.
Absolutely.
I just don't understand it.
Absolutely. And it is not a question of whether or not they make money. At some point, you have to go back to, is it the law?
Well, and it's not a question of whether they make money. It's a question of the risk that they're taking with somebody else's money. That's the problem. Yes. And they may have that risk tolerance. That may be okay. They may love REITs. I don't have a problem with REITs as a personal investor. But I know that there's a number of people in the communities I live in and have units in that would have a real problem with that because they don't have the money, they don't have the age to ride out that market. So, I get on my high horse a lot of times about people not putting aside reserves. But when people put aside reserves and then a board does something like this, which is totally irresponsible, I have a problem with that. But anyway,
So next step.
If it was, Peter can say, but I would file a complaint with the state. That I do think that, that's a violation. And when it comes to financial management, the state will jump on these kind of things. The state doesn't like this kind of stuff. And especially that annuity, which has got a personal benefit to an individual. They've dealt with those down south already, down in Fort Lauderdale and down in Miami. That's happened down there, and they've jumped all over that stuff. But I would file a complaint with the state. If the board, what I would do is first go to the board and say, this is an inappropriate investment, like you did, according to our, put them on notice that this is not an allowed investment, and you're going to file a complaint. And then if they don't take action, I'd file the complaint. Give them a chance to correct.
And now, one of the things I worry about is, okay, so now there have been no changes to the documents. That is the actual article that I read you from the bylaws. There have been no changes. Nothing was voted on by the owners, only apparently. And I've asked for a copy of the so-called resolution approving this. My next concern is how we would go about, and that's down the road. If this goes through, now we have the concern of trying to liquidate these assets in a market that's fluctuating wildly. And some of the things, quite frankly, would be liquidated at a loss. So, the maturation date on the annuity and the maturation date on the REIT is 2021. And there's, so anyhow, and you said at the beginning of the show that we can get a copy of this, that you record this, so that if there's
Yes.
information that I would like to provide for other people here who are working on this with me, I would have access to that. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the show streams is streaming and is recorded on at www.wstu1450.com. And if you go on there,
Okay.
there'll be a place to go. There's a link to go to the show, Condo Solutions, and you can get to today's show.
Okay, and that would be recorded by date or by podcast number?
By date.
By date.
Mhm.
Okay. Gentlemen, I want to thank you very, very much.
No problem. Thanks for the call, Barbara.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye. That's interesting, Peter, because we've seen that big down south. I haven't seen much of that up here, but I've
and also, if the state for whatever reason doesn't take jurisdiction over it, like anything else, then you're going to have to resort to the courts. So there is ultimate resolution or redress, whether that's through arbitration, court system, just making a complaint.
Yeah.
But anyway, I've had this come up, numerous times in the past, X million years that we've been doing this. And it's just, look, I don't think that, boards are necessarily, doing something nefarious in the sense of, with some bad intent. I just think, oftentimes, like you said, they get, frustrated with the low return, like I said before, on a standard type, deposit, with a, bank or an SNL. And, these guys, a lot of these, board members in their business lives were, either financial guys themselves or just, with their own personal money and feel they know how to invest and how to make investments grow and that. And so they just, they say, well, we're going to do it here too. Why should we just get this low rate of return when we can get a lot more? And I just think it's something that they just, when you're dealing with, like you said, when you're dealing with OPM, right, other people's money,
right.
You, especially, for this type of, corporation, the number one overriding concern, like you said, and like I said, is the money needs to be there. When it comes time to put the roof on or do this or do that. And it's not, it's just, it's not to maximize the return.
Yeah. And
it's just, I've had this discussion, with boards, and especially when, here the documents make it clear. So this one's,
yeah.
But these documents are not that clear. They don't have a strict restriction like this one about, money has to be in a certain place. You still can't be, in my view, throwing money into a stock market, even if it's something like a mutual fund, which is obviously safer than individual stocks. But it's not the game.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've already got off my soapbox now. So I'm done.
Well, no, and it's,
they have a fiduciary responsibility, right? We all talk that word thrown out all the time on this show and, in my own practice, your practice. And fiduciary, that means trust. That word means trust, basically. Yeah. So you're entrusted as a board, with this money. And, and you have to, reel it back in terms of, I'm going to get as much as we can, again, and err on the side of, well, it's not that much return, but it's safe. I can sleep at night. It's insured. It's an FDIC. It's a D. And that's the way to go.
Yeah. And, the thing is, and this is what I always,
simplistically,
first of all, one of the things that's involved that I always find it in these kind of things too, is that there's potentially somebody that's getting a financial benefit out of this. And that's a problem. Even, like
you can't do anything that
right.
smacks of, improper benefit personally.
Right. So even if, so for example, if you're if you're a broker and they're running it through your account, if you're if you've got if you're the annuitant or someone who's on that annuity policy that would potentially have a claim on the policy, if you die, that's a problem, and that they've got to have one of those individuals. If you've got which happens, even if you're just running that through your account or set the same person you use, maybe you're not getting a benefit of it, but you're using your guy or you're using your online system or whatever, you're getting some potential credit for that. And it's, so it's one of those kind of things where I have a real problem with that. And like you say, you can't plan for an association's activities. There's just no way. You can say, well, the roof isn't going to be needed for 20 years. That could be true. But what happens if we get a hurricane and we have to have it in 3 years? And by the way, the market's tanked at that point in time, or we can't get the money out at that time. And yeah, you may be able to use whatever you've got as collateral, but that collateral isn't worth anything or isn't worth as much as you need. And, at the same time, you've got, it may be hard to borrow money. It may be one of those kind of things that it's a tough time financially. So, I just, it's just not, there's a whole lot of problems with that. But I do think that annuity is, there's no way that's not a direct violation of state statute. Under 617, you cannot have any personal inurement, any kind of benefit that goes to the benefit of an individual. And that's in violation of the statute. So I just can't see any way that is allowed. But and I know what they were doing there. It was popular individually a number of years ago. A lot of annuities had a default rate, minimum default rate of 1% or 3%. So what you would do is you'd buy a 1-year annuity or a 3-year annuity, and it would pay 3% or 1% when you were getting 1/10 of 1% at the bank. So instead of going and doing a CD, they would do these 1-year annuities. They're fantastic. They work good for individuals. Not much risk, but keep in mind they're not insured. It's the insurance company that's behind it. So if the insurance company goes under, you don't have anything. So there's all kinds of issues there. But even if it works out right, it's an individual that's got to have it, and you can't do that. You can't make one of the officers. You can't make one of the board members. You can't do that. But I was going to say, Peter, I had, this thing, in talking to some of my fellow CPAs down south, these things are, these people, this happens down south quite a bit, and they get reined in eventually. The state's on top of them. I will tell, if there's a board member listening that's involved in this kind of stuff, let me tell you that what usually ends up is the state files and the association files fraud charges against you. That's what's going to happen. You're going to be looking at criminal fraud charges, because that's how this is kind of works through the system with the state. The state has the only laws we've passed in the last 4 years have all been because people were stealing money or doing something like this that ended up looking like they were stealing money. So, most of these things end up getting pushed through, and when they are adjudicated, it's because they're claiming that the person that did it committed fraud. So, just warning people out there, that extra 1% isn't going to be worth you spending, a year to 2 in jail or on probation. So just you might want to think twice about it. So anyway, it's gotten bad. It was bad for a while down south. I remember that up here someplace there was an association a number of years back, and they didn't like their bank, and so they gave each one of the board members $100,000 and said, go out and invest it. See if you can see if you can get a better return. And so people bought annuities, people bought CDs at banks, and the association had no idea where the money was. It was just hilarious. I mean, I just couldn't believe somebody actually did that. But anyway, that's what happened. We searched and searched. We couldn't find the money. I mean, we eventually tracked it down, but we weren't sure we weren't 100% sure because at the time we couldn't trace the money. We didn't know what had happened to it. People had cashed in, they had cashed in some CDs. We didn't know how much interest was, paid. And it was crazy, but anyway, so, yeah, it's, it's a tough situation. And, that was really a difficult problem. The other, the other issue that you have in these kind of things is even if the person is a genius and they're a financial, you've got a person that's really knows what they're doing and is very financially astute, worked on Wall Street and everything. That's fine. But what happens if what happens if something happens to that individual? That now what happens? We have a call. Go ahead.
Hi, this is John, and I had a question regarding associations and their right to deny someone's renewal of rent. If they have a landlord and a renter, this has nothing to do with the landlord and the renter not getting along. It's just the association is saying that this person has 20 pages of violations, which they have never seen or been notified of, but they decided they don't want to renew their lease after 8 years of good tenant.
Well,
why are they looking to not renew or not approve?
Because they say there's these 20 pages of violations, which they've never ever told these people about. And these people have lived here 8 years. I know them; they're good people. I'm not saying they're as pure as the driven snow. I'm sure there's something minor, but the point is they've never even been notified of any infractions.
The document should clearly say that renewals are subject to approval. Number one. Okay. Assuming that.
I'm sorry, say that again?
First, the document should clearly state that renewals are subject to approval.
Okay.
And then secondly, I think the association under this circumstance, or these circumstances, is going to have a problem if it hasn't been documented to the owner and their tenant of these violations. Obviously, they would have to be documented internally, but they should have been sent to the owner and to their tenant regarding whatever these violations are. And the violations would have to been somewhat material or serious, to their right to continue to be a tenant. I'm assuming the documents also have language in there somewhere that they have a right to disapprove for good cause or something. But it can't just be ticky-tack stuff. It needs to be something, relatively serious and written to the owner. I would say that under these circumstances, I would advise my client not to deny this type of approval. It seems arbitrary and it seems capricious and, or at least, unreasonable. If there's a documented history of, violations of a somewhat serious nature and refusal to comply with the association documents, well, that's a different story. And you've told them about it, and they still refuse to do it. But here, I don't know what these violations are. You don't have to go through it. But from what you described, it doesn't sound like it rises to the level to disapprove.
Yeah, and the person's been a tenant for 8 years. So, I mean, geez, I mean, you
Pretty
think,
good tenant.
yeah, I mean,
That's what I meant.
Yeah, somebody's been approved. If they've had to be approved every year, they've been approved for 8 years. So, I like you said, Peter, I would want to have a situation that now the unit owner may not have been notified. I mean, the tenant may not have been notified. The unit owner may have gotten notified. So,
well, that's another sticky point because it's by one of these corporations, investment companies. It's an LLC. So they're not dealing with a direct, and it's the second LLC since they've lived there. So they're not directly dealing with a individual per se as a landlord, and that's why they can't even get this LLC to go to bat for them after 8 years, which is pretty sad.
Well, most of those, I will tell you, a lot of these that own units in these places, they're some of them are big investment LLCs, but not most of them are just individuals that put their assets in LLCs to protect themselves from liability. And so
I know they make up a name and you can't even find them on the internet.
Yeah. Well, I tell you what, you don't necessarily know who the owner is, but if you go to sunbiz.org and do a search under name, you should be able to find it. At least find, because if they're doing business in the state of Florida, they've got to be registered in the state of Florida. And owning real estate is doing business in the state of Florida. So they would have, if you go to Sunbiz, you should be able to find out the name of the entity. Will be there. You can put the name of the entity in, and it will tell you who the manager is. Now, it won't tell you who the owner is, but many times the manager is the owner, but not always. And you can you can get a hold of that manager and find out, find out what's going on. But yeah, that's the, I think that's I know associations have the right to, to restrict tenants. And if they've got a tenant that's a problem, certainly they have a right to take action. But I think if they haven't notified the tenant that's a problem, and there's been a communication issue, and they've been there 8 years, I think, I'd have a hard time telling a board to, yeah, that's okay. You better have good cause.
And where in the docs would it normally be located that the board has the right to refuse the renewals? Would it be in the bylaws?
By the way, and Mark didn't mean to speak, but I just want to make sure it's clear. Associations do not have the right to approve or disapprove unless their documents expressly give them the right. There's nothing in the law that gives associations.
No. I'm not saying in 718. I'm saying in our docs. If I went to
no. I understand that, but I was going to say that first and then answer your question. It would be in the section, or it should be in the section dealing with. There's typically a section in condominium documents, either originally or as amended, that concerns the sale, transfer, lease of units.
Okay, that might even be in the declaration.
Usually in the it should be in the declaration of condominium, quite frankly. In fact, it must be, in my opinion, not in the bylaws, not in the rules. Okay. Must be in the declaration. Now, one thing to keep in mind here, this is a technical thing, but it's worth mentioning. Okay, if the owner of the unit, if LLC in this case, if they don't really care, in other words, if they don't, this sound caustic here, but if they don't care that this tenant gets disapproved, they don't want to fight the association, they'll just go out and find another tenant. In other words, to them, maybe it's just not worth fighting over this tenant. They'd rather just go out and find some other tenant, just for argument's sake. In that kind of circumstance, the tenant, who is the one being disapproved, really doesn't have any standing to say that the association is failing to comply with their own documents. Okay, because they're not an owner, and they don't have this case about 20 years old, where the tenant doesn't have standing to enforce the documents because that's an owner's right. So typically, where a tenant's getting disapproved, and they want to fight it, usually it would have to be because there's some kind of discrimination in play, that they're being discriminated against because of race or ethnicity or
age,
something like that. Whatever it is. So. That's just someone who's relatively sophisticated and understands all that stuff. But I just want to throw that out because if you're in a situation, because it sounds like you might be, where the landlord, because there's this big LLC that owns millions or billions of property throughout the country or Florida. And again, they don't care. They'll just find some other tenant. They don't want to bother with it. The tenant, unfortunately, could be kind of outside looking in. Just caught.
No, I understand, Peter, and that's what the first thing I told them that was that I told them, I says, if you got to get your landlord to fight for you because you're not a member, you don't have the right to petition this thing unless you're a member.
Good.
And so they understand that. It's just hard getting a hold of this little rickety. It's not a big one. It's just a small LLC, like Mark said. They're just people form these all the time. But you always hear about Nevada or Delaware. Do they still have to be listed on sunbiz.org if they have an LLC that was registered in a different state?
Yes, they would be listed as a foreign LLC, but they still have to be listed. They're still supposed to be listed to be able to do business. So a foreign entity, which would be a one registered in another state like Delaware, they have to register in Florida to do business and to be able to sue or bring suits in Florida and that kind of thing. So, and to transfer property and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, so they would still be listed.
Gotcha.
it may make reference back to, it'll make reference to address wise, but they also have to have an office in Florida. They have to have some place they can be served papers
Sure.
in Florida.
A nice P.O. box in one of those mailbox places.
Well, actually, they have to have a registered agent person that that they can take process, a service process. So
Okay.
yeah, so
Okay.
I mean, it could be one of those kind of things sometimes, but they're not supposed to be. They're supposed to be a physical address where they can, in the state of Florida, where they can take you can serve process.
Well, that's what I advised them to do. I said, just try to find the manager who might be the owner and see if you can appeal to them. But without that, they don't really have a leg to stand on, unfortunately.
They send their money to a person every month. They got to be paying a rent check out to somebody. And I tell you, I can't understand it. I mean, I do have a couple rentals myself. And if I have a tenant that's been in there 8 years, I want to keep them as long as possible.
I mean, that's what I would have thought too. And the thing is, though, Peter, if it's not in the declarations regarding the board's right to refuse renewal of rentals, would that give them any leeway, even though they're not a member?
Just not under the case that I'm aware of. They're just not.
They still don't have any standing, even if it's not in the document.
To enforce those documents.
Yeah. Okay.
But it would certainly give that owner almost a open shut case.
Yeah.
Can I ask you guys another question?
Sure. Go ahead.
I'm the pool guy, as you remember, the pool reserve guy.
Right.
And I did go to look up that gentleman. I don't have it in front of me, but you said there was a gentleman who actually did work for the department and came up with the cash flow idea.
Yeah, John Pete.
John Pete. Okay. Yeah, I'm not doubting what you say. It's not like he's some famous guy in history, but I could not find anything on the net regarding anything like that as far as him coming up with that idea or anything. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying it's amazing how something that does affect a lot of people wouldn't be publicized
Are you talking about the calculation of the pooled reserves, or are you talking about the state's person that wrote the information on how to do the pooled calculation?
The state person, I think you said, was one and the same, right? John Pete.
The state person is John Pete. Yeah. The person that actually came up with the idea of pooled reserves, I don't know who that was. There was a couple. There was actually more than one. It was a number of associations that were.
Yeah, that's not what I was getting at.
Yeah. Okay.
Where it got introduced into the Florida legislature, though.
Yeah.
I mean, did John Pete have a big play into how this got introduced?
No, he was the one that wrote the rules on how it would be implemented.
Okay, after the fact, after the law.
Yeah, after it got.
Okay.
So what happened is that there were a few associations that had wanted to pool these reserves so that they could keep their reserve assessments down. They of course went to their legislator. And this got pushed through. Then the state was given the responsibility of writing the rules on how this would be done. John was the one that did that.
Yeah,
but
the administrative state, which is more important than Congress.
Right. So, but I think John is he's still up in Tallahassee. He has a consulting firm up there, I think.
Okay. Well, I did see that. I'm sure he's got a firm up there.
Yeah,
he's just no longer associated with the department.
Yeah, he's not with this. He's not with the state anymore. But he does, like I say, he does have an office up there.
Okay, I misunderstood you. I thought that he had come up with the cash flow idea, but that was other people. I'm sure that's been around for decades, even before the 90s.
There were a few people that were trying to do it, but the trouble was that they couldn't really do it effectively. What they were trying to do was waive reserves down to that number. So what they were doing is they were calculating reserves on a straight line basis. And then what they would do is to figure out how much money they would have to put aside. They would, they were doing the pooled calculation of some kind, not always all the items, but they were pooling some of the stuff. And then they would say, okay, because we can use this money here, we're going to, as long as you transfer it in, we're going to just provide, X amount of money and say, $1,000 a month instead of $1,500 or whatever. So that's kind of what happened. But yeah, it's kind of interesting. But Jonathan was the one that kind of put the rules together. So he knows a lot about pooled reserves.
Well, thanks again, guys.
Yeah,
Always a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks. All right. We appreciate it, John. Thanks. Appreciate the call. Peter, as always, appreciate all your input and all of the information you provide. And thank you for joining us on the show every week for the last gazillion years. And as we always say, we'll be here next week, Monday 9 to 10 o'clock, right here on WSTU Digital 1450. We are Martin County's Heritage Station. So please join us.